My name's Steve Fender. I'm from Fender's Fish Hatchery. We've done a lot of videos on ponds, pond stocking, pond maintenance, aeration, bacteria, good bacteria, and a lot of other things. And what this video is going to focus on is pond construction. A lot about the laws, for one thing, that you need to adhere to and look at before you go to even building a pond. So you can see behind me the equipment and stuff that I use, but before you even break that first bit of dirt, you need to do a little bit of research. In a lot of areas, you got to watch what you do. For one thing, if you built a pond, what they consider wetlands in some areas, and you built a pond and get it done, you could find out that you get some very stiff fines because you disturbed wetlands. The other thing is pond dam height, how deep the pond can be, how high the dam can be, and how steep the dam is. There's a whole lot of things that the Corps of Engineers will look at if you sneak a pond in, so to speak, and they find out about it through satellite imagery, or you got a neighbor that turns you in. There's things you want to watch. So when you built the pond, get a hold of somebody that you can trust. Soil and water conservation districts in the United States are usually very useful. Do a search and find somebody that does a lot of pond building that's very knowledgeable, and interview them a little bit and make sure they know what they're talking about also. Behind me, I've got a pond that I've started here this summer, starting putting together, and in my spare time been building. It's going to end up to be about 1.5 acres of water. I'll walk back and show you a little bit about what I had to look at before I actually started doing the construction on this. The first thing I'd done, I took this machine, track hoe, and I dug some test holes. You've got to have good soil, unless you're digging down into a water table. Now in some situations, for example, stone quarries, when they mine the sand and gravel out, they dig down and it isn't too far till they hit the water table. And those big gravel quarries will be a great place for ponds because this water is saturated into sand and gravel, and as they dig that sand and gravel out, they develop a lake. So that's one way. All of our ponds that we have, they hold water by having good clay in the bottom. So the first thing I'd done once I determined that I have the right environment to build this in, I dug some test holes. And what I wanted to look for when I'd done this is, once I get through that topsoil, I wanted to see clay. I want to see clay down as deep as I thought I was ever going to have to dig. Or at least dig deep enough in several different locations where you know you have enough clay reserves that if you do run into an issue, like sand and gravel, or in my case, coal, you can dig that stuff out, open it up, pack clay back into it. And exactly that's what I ran into, not expecting this. You know, I dug down about 12 feet to dig this pond, and in the process I hit coal. I hit a vein about 24 inches deep, and in some places as big as this big dozer, or bigger than that actually. I dug that out and repacked it back in with clay, so to seal that all back off so the water wouldn't seep back through the clay or through the coal and basically have a pond that leak. So dig your test holes, make sure you're going to be good that way. The other thing you want to look at, when I looked at this pond, I looked at what my runoff was going to amount to. Was it going to have enough water to fill it up? Now, there's some areas that is just as flat as a board, and they rely entirely off of just rainwater. And if there's houses or buildings or anything else around there, they'll actually route their overflows or their spoutings into the pond to help fill those ponds up. If you got a really, really good clay base that doesn't leak, then just rainwater in itself will typically keep you enough water to support fish and anything else you want to do. In situations where you maybe don't have a lot of runoff, you may want to make the pond a little bit deeper for more reserve. Depth of pond, I'll touch on that a little bit. People ask me all the time, how deep should I build my ponds? And you know, it really depends on your situation. This particular pond, in order to get 1.5 acres of water, I had to make it 12 feet deep in order to have it. And the reason I've done it is because I get a slope here, and down as far as I went, I had to get 12 foot of height in order to back the water back up. And to get that 12 foot of height, I had to dig out. So you get into a ravine situation or a swale that drops off fairly quickly, you may have to take a lot of dirt out and make it deeper just to make the dam high to push the water back, so you get some surface. So how deep you make the pond depends sometimes on your particular situations you're dealing with. If you're simply digging a hole in the ground, I tell my customers, you lose 7, 8 feet, 9 feet, typically that's deep enough. If you go down to 12, 15 feet of water, you're going to get deep enough, pretty soon you're going to be making dead water because there's no sunlight penetration down so far, and you've pretty much wasted a lot of money to move dirt that you didn't need to move. So everybody builds ponds for different reasons. I've actually seen people build ponds because they needed dirt to build a foundation for their house. So, you know, it just ended up with an incidental, basically a free pond because they had to have the dirt. So things you want to look at when you're building these ponds. You know, if you decide to take this on yourself, which, you know, go for it if you want to, but you need to know how to operate equipment. If you don't have a lot of experience, you could end up costing yourself more than if you would have hired somebody knowledgeable to know what they was doing. In my case, I just like to run equipment. I have fun with it, I enjoy it, and with us being in the business that we are, every year I'm either building ponds or cleaning ponds out. This year, I was doing both. I'm still in the process of building this one, and this valley I have down through here, there's a 50-acre field here, and I'd like to think that I'll eventually have probably a third or not quite a half of it underwater till I get done. I've got to place the ponds strategically in such a way that I catch all the rainwater I possibly can. Now, in my case here, we'll also drill a well to supplement the water too. Now, with being in business, the fish business, and trying to make money raising fish, I can afford to put a well in to subsidize the water. Not every pond owner is going to want to put a well in because it can become very expensive to drill those wells just to keep a pond full. So, being that said, try to find a situation where you've got plenty of clay to where it's simply going to hold the water. So when we build ponds, just to give you a quick overview, first thing I do is you can see piles of dirt out there that are pushed up. And right here even is a pile of dirt. That's all topsoil that I've pushed off. We push the topsoil off first, expose all the clay, then start pushing the clay back. But even before you do that, in this situation here, when I was building the pond, I found clay tile. This farm, we've had it since 1955, and probably 50 years before that, somebody came through here and hand dug clay tile in to drain the wet spots off so they could farm this. So, you know, that's another situation you run into. If you don't have the right guy in here doing this, and they don't know to dig what they call a core trench to cut those tile off, you could push up a pond and start filling up with water, and one of those clay tiles that didn't get destroyed will start leaking and drain your pond all out. So another reason you want to have somebody doing things that knows how to do this stuff. Take in consideration your amount of runoff that you have. Will your pond hold that runoff? You know, if you got 100 acres, you don't want to build a quarter-acre pond that's going to have 100 acres draining into it. If you have even 20 acres and you have 2 acres of water or pond there, make sure you got a big enough overflow to handle this. You know, so you want to take into consideration overflow sizes. Do you need an emergency overflow, which is the emergency is for when we have really, really heavy rains that your primary overflow doesn't stand. So when the primary overflow gets full, the pond comes up, runs out the emergency overflow. These are all things you need to have in place so when the pond's built and you have this unexpected 100-year flood like they call them, it doesn't wash your pond out. At the very least, you lose a few fish, but your dam stays in place. So there's just a whole lot of things you want to take into consideration when you build a pond. Talking to somebody that's done it before, if you try to do it yourself, definitely research and get some good advice on it. If you hire somebody to come in and do it, research them really hard. Make sure that you've seen the ponds they've built. You talk to people that's had them built ponds for you, because doing something like this, moving dirt like this, is very, very expensive. An acre of water, guys will ask me all the time what it costs to build something like this. You know, it could range from, you know, $6,000 or $8,000 to $50,000, literally that much, because of how much dirt you're moving, what kind of overflows you're dealing with. The other thing you got to watch is permittation. I have one customer that had a 3-acre lake, decided to build a dam and encompass that new pond into the old pond, making a total of 10 acres. And he found out real quick that just because he owned the ground doesn't mean he could do what he wants without first getting a lot of permits. He had spent $125,000 in permitting before he broke the first bit of dirt, just from environmental studies that the EPA wanted him to do. Then after they started building, there was an EPA guy there all the time watching them, because the thing he got into, his dam was severely high and backed up so much depth of water that they were concerned about if the dam would break and the impact it'd have to the property owners downstream from him. So, you know, these are all things that you want to consider before you go to break any dirt at all. Another important thing, call before you dig. You know, there's all kinds of infrastructure underneath of us. And I have a friend of mine that flies across pipelines, high pressure transmission lines. Does this, they have to do these same lines once a week to check them. They're great big lines that carry high pressures. And if you would dig into one of those things and you hit that and it sparks, you're done right now. Vaporized because of the gas and the explosion. You're just done, and it could impact all kinds of people in the neighborhood also. Something as minor, that's very major, but something even minor is just a small transmission line. On this farm here, we have 3 different gas lines that I can contend with that are coming from wells that are on us or low pressure. At the very least, I would break them, and then they would have to come in and fix them. And in those kind of situations, you know, the company that you mess this stuff up for, they're going to charge you for that. If that gas is high pressure and it gets into an engine, it'll start making an engine overrun and could blow an engine up. Another bad one is your fiber optics. If you cut into a fiber optics line someplace, it gets expensive very quickly. You could lose your entire property over a lawsuit or something like that. So call before you dig. That's one of the first things you got to do that. Make sure that you don't have some kind of infrastructure underneath you that right where you're going to build that pond that you just didn't know was there. You know, those gas lines going across this farm was put back in the 80s. I didn't realize where they were at, and I contacted the oil and gas guys, and they traced those lines and they pointed them out to me, so I know what I've got to deal with here too. So you got to be careful about that. So you definitely want to do your homework. Call before you dig. They can check things out. Talk to you know, your soil and water conservation district or somebody that is knowledgeable about this stuff. No matter where you're at, whether you're in the United States, Canada, or another country, someplace else, you want to make sure your laws, you're not going to break the law someplace because they come back on you and really screw things up for you. So don't want a good adventure to turn into a real problem for you. Built the pond in such a way you're going to enjoy it. Don't make the dams too steep. Do your homework, and if you get any questions, you can always, you know, if you're in the States especially, I can lead you in the right direction. If you're outside of the States, I'm a little helpless that way, but you know, I've had a lot of people call me and ask me different things, how to do things, and also I can tell you how to clean out old existing ponds and make them better too. So anytime you guys have any questions, you can call me. My phone number will be on this video, and also you can check out the rest of our videos at www.fendersfishhatchery.com. So, and a lot of times people will ask me questions on those videos, and so if you don't get a response from me, please just try to contact me either with our email that's on our website or call me direct. So thanks for watching.